Why?
I mean, get off the phone.
Okay, so we've got a full team here. So why don't we start? I'll call the meeting to order. Is there any public participation? Okay, seeing none. Chief, I know I called and introduced myself to you a couple of days ago. We had not met before. I know you know Joanne and Gerard, who have been on this team previously. Amy, I don't believe you were on this budget. Were you?
No, I'm new.
So if you want to introduce yourself to the chief.
Sure. So Amy Forsyth, I live just not too far from the public service building. I'm over just across from the lake. Lived in Wakefield for about 16 years. My husband grew up here and was in the Navy and just could not stay away. So here we are.
Excellent. Well, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
This is my second go around at the budget. Gerard and Joanne held my hand last year when we went through this.
The chief was the new person at the meeting last year. So
Now it's me.
Well, Chief, I'll just tell you, as a townie, I grew up here and spent most of my life, and I would just tell you that, you know, the feedback I get about you and you in the role and your leadership is really excellent. So kudos to you.
Thanks, appreciate it.
So what I thought we could do is I sent out, I'm going to see now, we're at work, we're a Microsoft Teams company, so I'm not much doomster here. And what I thought we could do, and, you know, just what I wouldn't mind doing is stepping through what I sent to everybody, where I did a side-by-side comparison of 2021 to 2022 by categories. And let me see, I can bring that up. So can folks see that?
perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
And I thought, you know, at a minimum, we could ask the chief, let me see how this rolls here. If he could just talk about category by category with some of the, you know, and I think we all know what we're going to hear. Those of us on the finance committee, what you hear about, you know, the top line and then the other categories, and then we can dive down into some other things. You know, the chief pointed out to me that, you know, Steve was pretty firm with all his department heads about what his expectations were about overall increases. And the chief said, you know, he listened intently, and, you know, we get on COVID, he might not be such a good listener about this stuff, but or perhaps be a little bit more aggressive or persuasive about some of the things he needs. So I think, you know, Chief, if we could just step through, you know, if you could talk about at a high level, personal, contractual, materials and supplies and sundry.
Sure.
Here's the, you know,
So knowing that, you know, what we went through, the town's going through financially with COVID over the last year, and what the financial outlook is in the future, we didn't, the goal was not to add anything to this budget, but we did have to touch on professional services, which I'll get to. But I'll start with personal services, which is the personnel that work here. There's a 4.28% increase in personal services. So when I scrolled down, when you sent this to me the other day, I looked at the column that showed the percentage increases for each person.
Yeah.
And it baffled me at first. I couldn't figure out why it was 4.27, 4.34, 4.28, because everybody should just be getting the straight contractual raise. So what I was able to figure out was that last year, the officers got a 1.5% raise on July 1st, and then they got a second 1.5% raise January 1st. So for half the year, they only had a 1.5% raise. And then for the second half of the year, they had a 3% raise. But going into next year, they're getting a 3% raise right on July 1st. So that's why that percentage increase for each officer is right around 4.28%. Does that make sense?
yeah.
It didn't make sense to me when I first looked at it.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, as it relates to overall increases, you know, for people, that kind of irrelevant, right? I mean, we're looking at the top line with you, and the top line comes up to 4.3. So kind of the math works, right?
Right. Okay, so the next line down, scroll down here.
Contractual services and, there's, I think, it's, and I know I asked the chief to talk about this as one line item in there. That's where the $85,000 consulting services is, chief, that
Correct.
previously.
So in previous years, we had added, a couple of years ago, we added a recovery coach. She's instrumental in helping us with people who have addiction, helping them seek treatment. And there's a cost to that of $30,000 a year. So at the time that she was added to our budget, she was put into the unclassified category, which historically always had $4,500 in it. So that's used for miscellaneous items, whether it be prisoner meals or any miscellaneous expenses that we have. But that $30,000 was lumped into the unclassified. Then last year, we sought to have the mental health clinician added full-time. So Elliott Community Services, who we work with, they agreed to give us a full-time clinician for a cost of $20,000. That was added to that unclassified budget. So you'll see that in fiscal year 2021, there was $54,500 appropriated in the unclassified account. So what we wanted to do was to streamline this, make it more understandable, and create a professional services line item that just included the recovery coach and the mental health clinician. So we removed them from unclassified. That line item, $53.99, goes back to $4,500. And then professional services, we're looking for $87.5. So where do we come up with $87.5? So 30,000 of that is the recovery coach. And then what Elliott Community Services said to us was, well, we gave you the mental health clinician last year at a discounted rate. They took $25,000 off their end of it last year and only charged us $20,000. So they want to charge us the full amount for the clinician, factoring in her raise and the benefits, which would be $97.5. So it would be $122.5 for total cost. However, the benefit of having the, my math is a little off there, but the benefit of having the clinician full-time is that we get a $40,000 grant. And we use that $40,000 grant to offset the cost of the clinician. Does that make sense?
I'm a little lost, so bear with me. So if I heard you, that line item of 87.5 is made up of $30,000 for a recovery coach.
And $57.5 for the mental health clinician.
Okay, so it's 57. I thought I heard a bigger number.
And it would be $97.5, but we get a $40,000.
Okay, so it nets out based on you getting
the grant.
Okay. Who does that grant work for you, Chief?
Deputy Chief Calabrese actually does it. He's been doing it for a couple of years now.
Okay. Could you just, I think we'd all be interested, if you don't mind, could you elaborate a little bit more? And again, Joanne and Gerard, if this is redundant for you, I apologize, but could you I'd be interested to know what each of those individuals does for the department and what roles, what circumstances?
So I'll start with the recovery coach. So we have Amy Rando as a police officer here. She's our dedicated family services officer. She serves a number of roles. She deals with domestic violence victims. She follows up with trying to help the homeless with whatever needs they have. She follows up with overdoses, and she brings Tracy in. Tracy Escalillo is our recovery coach. She brings Tracy in on all of that. So Tracy, through her work with Elliott, she has connections to get people into treatment. Whereas if somebody went to seek help on their own, say down at Melrose Wakefield Hospital, they may not be able to link up with the services that they need right away. Tracy has the connections to do that. And then she continues to follow up with people afterwards. Not everybody is receptive to help at first. It usually takes a couple of times to get somebody to buy in, but she sticks with that person throughout the whole recovery process. And her success is probably measured in the number of overdoses that we have each year. And since she's been here, we've seen probably about a 25% reduction in overdoses from year to year.
Wow.
How is that holding true through COVID, Chief?
COVID was really quiet for overdoses. I don't know if it was just more difficult for people to obtain drugs. I know that, a lot of people weren't out driving around, and for the drug dealers, I think they were laying low because they were stuck out like a sore thumb where everybody else was quarantined. Unfortunately, we've seen an uptick in the last month or two. There's some potent stuff that's out there right now that's really knocking people down. It's not good, but we're dealing with that.
Okay.
So
And then
Bill,
as
I
far
have
as-
a question if I could jump in on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Chief, I asked a kind of a similar question to Chief Smith a couple of years ago. And I seem to recall District Attorney Ryan coming out a few years back when we were really starting to peak on opioid, really, saying, we need to not treat addiction like a law enforcement problem, at least exclusively. And it seems like though there was something of that policy statement, I don't know how binding it is naturally, but what would these resources not make more sense in the Department of Health kind of context if that's the zeitgeist? I don't know, and I'm not advocating one way or the other.
So
I'm
we-
just trying to
we
figure
shared-
like, go ahead, please.
Tracy shared between us and the health department. She works with Catherine Dinger as well in the health department.
Okay, all right, that makes
So
sense.
she is connected in there. And so it's a great question because, as you've been listening to everything that's going on throughout the country for the last 9 months and police reform and everything.
Yeah.
People are saying, well, why are the police handling these situations? It should be mental health. It should be mental health clinicians handling these cases. In an ideal world, that would be great. But the truth of the matter is, they wouldn't be safe doing so. And a lot of these cases start with us. We're the first responders. If somebody overdoses, we're the first people there to administer Narcan. So everything really starts with us. So it's good that they're with us, and it's good that we're with them through the follow-up as well.
That makes sense, of course.
Okay. Can you talk, are we good on that? Anybody else have any questions about the recovery coach? Okay, could you talk about the mental health clinician, Chief?
Sure. I could talk about her for days. The work she does here, the work she saves the police officers is unbelievable because we have a huge population of people in town who suffer from mental illness. And she has a following of people that come in to see her every day. If they're in crisis, they come to see her. And what that does is it saves us from having to deal with people. She
has an office in your,
if that's what you want to call it, it's
Well,
a converted closet.
I've obviously saw some of the pictures.
That's like you just set him up, Bill.
Yeah,
It's a
that was, hey, Chief, better days ahead, right?
Yeah, public
absolutely.
safety building.
So she works 10 to 6 every day, Monday to Friday. And she does come in when we need her when she's not working. She lives over in Reading. But she's instrumental really in again, just like the recovery coach, she has resources to get people help. So if somebody needs to be evaluated, she has the resources to get them evaluated. If somebody wants inpatient treatment, she has that kind of resources. Together, the recovery coach and the mental health clinician, what they've done to help some people who suffer from both mental illness and substance abuse to get them inpatient treatment. We have some clients, I call them in town, that we see every day and sometimes 10 times a day. And without their help, we would have all of our resources, police resources, tied up with these people. So the amount of work that they save us is unbelievable. And they have a rapport and they can talk to people in a way that and get through to them that maybe others couldn't.
Do they make appointments or is it
No, there's no appointments. You can usually see the shopping carts parked out front and people walking through the front door to visit them. It's amazing, really, to think that this is where police services have come since I started my career.
Okay.
We had an incident, I'm sure you all know, we had swap color a couple of weeks ago, Richardson Ave. And it ended peacefully, which is what the goal was. And she was instrumental in establishing communications with that person to make that end peacefully. So she was worth her weight in gold just for that one incident.
Yeah. Is that, are those services typically available in other towns, cities and towns? Or is that something, do you ever get to, does this ever end up being a full-time role within a?
Some towns have a full-time clinician. For instance, the city of Lynn has one. Obviously, there's a need there. But the towns that don't have them, it's a struggle for them to, when they deal with mental illness, it's a struggle for them to get people the services that they need, because they don't have maybe the established rapport with Elliott Community Healthcare or Riverside Healthcare. So, and they're tying up the police officers with mental health cases.
Is this something then, I mean, do you look down the road? Do you think that this is something that should be staffed full-time? And to part of what Gerard said, is it in the right place that it's, you know, part of the police department as opposed to perhaps somewhere else within the town?
I think it is the right place because we're the only ones open 24/7. And when people are in crisis, it can happen at any time of the day. It typically doesn't always happen, it doesn't always happen 9 to 5. It could be at 2 in the morning. So if you need help, who do you call? You call 911. So we're 24/7. Could I see this? Could I see this requiring 2 mental health clinicians 10 years from now? I wouldn't say no, because if you asked me 10 years ago if we'd have 1 mental health clinician now, I'd say probably not, but we do.
Mhm.
I just see this sector of public service continuing to grow.
But do you see a time where you think it would be something you would advocate for to be, you know, a role, you know, a town employee?
I did talk to the deputy chief about that. We talked about the cost of this. I said to him, I said, would it be cheaper for us to hire a mental health clinician and town employee rather than go through Elliott?
Probably not.
Probably not. And then we would lose the $40,000 grant.
Yeah.
So could it be? It all depends. Mental health is a very difficult thing to deal with. And
Yeah.
she certainly brings something to the table that none of us have.
Yeah. I just kind of fascinating when you're telling us. I'm just wondering what the future holds. Is that something that would be, embedded within the town, position? But, have a crystal ball on that at this point, have a strong view on that one way or the other.
Yeah, and I think having the clinician and the recovery coach here in the police building is important. The relationship between the two of them and the police officers, just being able to go down the hallway, have a conversation about maybe somebody who they dealt with the previous night was having some issues. If it was a separate town employee, town office, down at town hall, a lot of those conversations wouldn't be had. And they're important conversations.
Okay.
Accessibility is everything.
I appreciate you at least, educating me on what that is. That's fascinating to learn and know. Does anybody else have any other questions about that specifically? It's as you look at the budget, it just, something going from 0 to that, it jumps out. So I appreciate you.
So I do want to point out a couple of things too. We knew that it looks like it's a lot of money to ask for. So to try and help offset some of that increased cost, we looked at other areas that we thought we could trim. And we found 4 line items that we did trim some money from to try and help offset that. If you look at 5271, which is hired equipment.
Yeah.
Last year we were appropriated $18,120. We were able to trim $2,000 from that. So we took $2,000 from there. If you look at line item 5341, which is telephone, we really went through that with a fine tooth comb. We trimmed a lot of fat from that line item. We got that down to $35,000. So we trimmed $5,000 from that. Down in materials and supplies.
Our esteemed colleague Doug Butler would love to hear that. Then he'd be challenging you about your postage, but go ahead.
Can I ask real quick, what exactly is hired equipment? What is in that category?
Let me tell you. Let me get to that item. It's anything that we need to rent. In my budget, it's labeled rental equipment. And it's, let me tell you exactly. in a minute. It includes all of the printers in the police station. They're all leased. So that's hired equipment. We have to rent the range when we go to the firearms training. That's twice a year. Comcast equipment is hired equipment. And that really is all that we pay out of that line item, but it adds up.
Okay, I was just curious what that was.
That should be in the IT budget.
So then scrolling down to materials and supplies, line 5423, we were able to reduce that by 1,000. And then line 5540, which is other materials and supplies, that was bumped up significantly a year ago for the parking enforcement officers. There's some computerized equipment that we purchased for them, that we have a contract with a company called Accomplice. We have the parking enforcement officers have these handheld devices that do all the parking tickets electronically. It prints the ticket. All the information from the ticket is sent through the beams to the cloud, where people can pay their tickets online. Everything's done online. And we've actually got this company hooked in now to the town's website so that people can purchase their parking permit stickers through this company online. So that was bumped up significantly to $13,000 for fiscal year 21. We were able to trim $2,000 from that. The bills weren't as much as we thought they would be. So we were able to trim $10,000 from other line items to try and help make up a little bit for the increase from the professional services.
Chief,
have the parking, have the parking
ahead.
attendants been busy during COVID, or what?
So a lot less busy than they were the first year. The first year was extremely busy because it was new. It was new. People hadn't, you've lived in town a long time. You know how the parking is in Wakefield. I don't have to tell you. It took a long time.
They were teaching new behaviors.
Yes, and sometimes it takes a while to teach people new behaviors. So they issued a lot of tickets the first year. And then we got compliance. People play by the rules now. The numbers certainly went down. I'm not going to lie, during COVID, we tried to go easy on the businesses downtown in Greenwood. We didn't want to punish customers with ticket violations for 2 hours when these businesses downtown are just struggling to survive. With that being said, we still issued, I think it was 971 tickets last year. And I think it brought in $39,200, right around there.
Seems pretty consistent with the year before we instituted the parking attendants,
Yeah, last
if
year.
I recall correctly.
Last year,
Yeah.
the numbers were off the charts for when
Yeah.
the parking was new. And I suspect that, once COVID ramps down and people can get back to their normal lives, they'll be a lot busier.
Yeah.
But I will say this, it's been a huge relief to us because we don't hear the complaints anymore. And the biggest people we had to get buy-in from were the actual shopkeepers downtown. And they finally bought in, they comply. They were the biggest violators, some of them, not all of them, some of them, but they all finally bought in, and we don't hear any complaints anymore. And the biggest thing we hear is people are happy they can find a parking space. So it was well worth it.
Chief, is that lot over by the Omelet House? That's a town lot, isn't it?
It is.
I tell you, maybe we should talk to Steve sometime. That would be nice if that was paved and lined and, have some designation for employees in the stores,
So what they're gonna do next year, I talked to Joe Conway about that. There's a lot of streets in town that are gonna be repaved this year. They're just waiting for National Grid to finish their project.
Yeah.
When they grind those roads down, they're gonna take the asphalt that gets ground down and they're gonna put it in that lot, roll it, and it should pack down almost like asphalt. And then they're gonna put some lines down.
You'd have an opportunity to take away a lot of excuses for not providing, and again, how do you monitor? Do you know those are, people working in stores, but that's a great spot for parking.
It is, and the light department added extra lighting last year. There was a complaint that came in that it was too dark, so
Yeah.
they went down there and put some extra lights up.
Yeah, that's a good opportunity, I think. One thing I thought of that's, and I honestly don't remember where it is, but it's notable and heartbreaking. There's no money in there, obviously, for the 4th of July, right? I think it was $38,000. Do I remember that right somewhere?
There was, and Steve took that out last year because of the fact that we didn't have the 4th of July.
Yeah, but it's not in this year's budget either, right?
4th of July, no,
No.
because we were already made aware that the 4th of July was canceled.
Oh, okay. And again, the only other thing that, when I mentioned this to you when we talked a couple days ago, is I was just kind of interested, and then I'll be quiet and let the rest of the team ask questions, but just how do your vehicles work? What's the process for the acquisition and
So
maintenance and stuff, or is that a sore subject?
no.
I
So
see.
what happens is
I mean,
I
is that
make
all
a
capital? This is, maintenance and repair in your budget?
It is. So I make a request through capital for a certain number of vehicles each year. And if we stay on a certain replacement cycle, the cars stay in pretty good shape. They don't get too beat up and they don't need major repairs. So that's how we purchase the vehicles. Once we have the vehicles, then there's some maintenance line items added to the budget here. So we have maintenance auto, which is line 5243. And there's $9,000 appropriated in there. What we use that for is insurance deductibles if the cars are in an accident, if the motorcycle needs to be serviced, Seacoast Harley Davidson services those. Any changes to vehicle markings with Markarian, their company down on New Salem Street. Any emergency equipment that needs to be repaired or replaced comes out of that line item. We have to replace the fire extinguishers annually, radar unit maintenance, and we also use that account for the car washes and the vehicle detailing. We use Flo's Auto Bath on Water Street. They charge us one fee for the whole year. It's a flat rate, no matter how many car washes we use. And then the vehicle detailing, we try to get each car detailed twice a year. They get kind of filthy inside, especially during the winter time. So it's nice to have those get cleaned thoroughly so that the officers have a nice little mobile office to work in.
And
So I'm sorry, Bill, before you move on. So last year we cut capital by $1 million. How many new cars, vehicles did we? Yeah.
I was supposed to get 3. I ended up with 1.
Okay, thank you.
okay. Are the repairs done at the town garage?
Most of them, what they're capable of doing. So if you go to line item 5481,
Yeah.
motor vehicle parts and accessories. That's where the vehicle repairs come from. So if the cruiser goes to the DPW garage and their mechanics work on it, the repair costs come out of that budget, whatever the parts are. I get a statement every month, which includes how much gas each vehicle used, the cost of the fuel, the repairs to each vehicle, and what the costs were to repair each vehicle. And then DPW takes the repair costs and they're removed from that line item, and then the gasoline costs are removed from 5482 gasoline and oil. So we looked for an increase in that last year because we were having an issue. I'll get into my speech about different types of vehicles. We were having a problem with the Fords. That Ford stopped producing the Crown Victoria. The fleet model Explorers that they were producing were starting to break down really fast. We were going through a lot of water pumps, catalytic converters, things that just weren't covered by warranty. So we were getting hit hard with repair costs. We have one motorcycle that's also leased, and that comes out of that line item. So we've started to purchase Dodge Durangos and Chargers. So far, so good. Knock on wood, they continue to hold up. And hopefully we can drive the cost of repairs down over the next few years by going with Dodge.
Who makes the decision townwide what manufacturer is bought from?
Well, for us, it comes down to what vehicles are tested for police use. They have to be patrol rated. So when you look at patrol rated vehicles, there's a limited number of vehicles that are tested out, and they include the Ford Interceptor, the Ford Explorer, Dodge Durango, Dodge Charger, the Chevy Tahoe, and the Chevy Silverado pickup truck, and the Dodge Ram pickup truck. Those are the only vehicles that are tested out for police use. So one of my responsibilities when I was a lieutenant was to purchase police cars. So a lot of what I looked at was, what are you getting for your dollar? What are you most bang for the buck? We were having a problem with Fords breaking down quickly. And then Ford went to their new Ford Explorers, the ones you see up on the highway the state police have. They're hybrid vehicles. My concern right now with hybrid police cars is how fast will they break down, and what are the repair costs of the hybrid car? And the cost also went up significantly on the vehicle itself. I think right now to buy one of those, just the flat vehicle itself without the emergency equipment, is right around $39,000. The Durangos, they're coming in somewhere around $32,000, $33,000. So they're about $6,000 less in cost.
Does department by department get to make their own selections about what vehicle manufacturer they go with?
They do. It's whatever they feel comfortable with.
Huh.
We purchase our vehicles off the Plymouth County bid. So it's a state contract. It's awarded to a Ford dealer, a Dodge dealer, a Toyota dealer, and a couple of, Chevy, a couple of Chevy dealers. So we get a discounted rate by participating in the Plymouth County bid process.
I would offer to you, one of my responsibilities where I work is fleet, and GM is, we find, the highest rated from a service and warranty perspective. I don't know. I just offer that to you.
So a lot of departments are buying Tahoes for patrol. We have two administrative vehicles. Stoneham's using Tahoes for patrol. I just think that my personal opinion is they're too big for patrol work.
They're big.
They are big. I mean, they're nice because there's plenty of room inside for equipment. But I just think for general patrol, especially around a town like Wakefield, I think they're just too big. I think they're great for the highway. The troopers have a lot of equipment they have to take up on the road with them. And they travel a lot of miles. So
Yeah.
it might be nice for them. I just think for us, they're too big. The two we have, they're set up for myself and the deputy chief, and they're set up like mobile command centers. So if there's a major incident, we can use either one of our cars to be a command post.
Okay. I'll stand down. I don't have any other questions. Amy, Joanne, Gerard?
Oh, I was going to ask the line 5150, what the fitness incentive is.
5150. So a few years ago, the unions negotiated into their contract a fitness incentive, and annually they can opt in to take a fitness test. And if they pass the fitness test, each officer that passes gets $1,000 stipend. So that line item actually went up by $2,000 this year because we've hired some new officers, some younger officers who I fully expect to be taking the fitness test. So to make up the difference here, we eliminated the matron line item 5123. That used to have $2,000 in it. We just moved that $2,000 to the fitness incentive line item. We used to have to use matrons when we had female prisoners because we didn't have any female police officers. So now we have 5 female officers. So the need to call somebody in to do a search of a prisoner or search property, and we have female officers here to do that.
Any other thoughts or questions for the chief?
Bill, I have a perennial question to many department heads, but especially public safety folks is, Chief, it's helpful for us to understand what in here might be driven by things like unfunded state or federal mandates. They often come down. We see them in building inspector, fire chief, your department historically. So as you mentioned, the past 9 months, things have been interesting in your line of work. So any thou shalts or whatever coming down that might be peppered in here that aren't, explicitly laid out, but are driving costs generally?
So it's a tough question because there's a lot of unknowns. The police reform bill came out, signed by the governor on December 31st. I read all 6 versions as they came out, made their way through the legislature. And there's a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot of commissions that have been created to study different things, one of them being body cams. So I'm a fan of body cams. I'd love to have them. I studied them last year. We had some vendors that came in, gave us demonstrations on the cameras, how they work, what the cost would be. But then I froze everything once police reform started because they were talking about body cams during police reform. And there was some language in the original bill that said you'll do this, that, and the other thing with body cams. So I kind of put it on hold, just waiting to see what would come out of police reform. There was no concrete language in there when the final bill was signed. There was a committee assigned to study them. So they may come out at some point this year and say body cams are mandated, and they probably won't be funded. So if we're looking at a cost, an estimated cost for a startup, probably talking $100,000. Most of that cost, the original cost is purchasing the cameras, but the expensive part of it going forward after that is data retention. So a lot of these companies will offer data retention, download your video at the end of your shift to keep it in the cloud. You want to keep all video, and that will probably run around $60,000 a year. So when you sign a contract with these companies, it's a deal where they'll retain your data. They'll help you label it so you can find it later. And then when the camera becomes outdated, they replace the camera. So you're not purchasing new cameras every 3 to 5 years when new technology comes out.
Yep.
So the biggest one I'm figuring is coming forward is body cams. I'd actually like to get ahead of the curve on that one and get them here before they become mandated by the state. But of course, it's something that has to be negotiated with the union, but something that I want to push for.
How about companion training? Would you expect a training increase to properly use the cameras once installed?
There's not a whole lot of training that goes involved. There's an on-off button and plug it into a charger. When you plug the camera into a charger, that's when all the data gets downloaded. Yeah. And every camera is different. Every operating system is different with each company. Some cameras, they just keep sending the info through the cloud to the storage, and other ones you have to put into a docking station, and that's where it gets downloaded. Yeah. There's a lot of interesting things that go in each camera. They're all designed different. Some don't have batteries that you can disconnect and charge separately. So if we had, and they only last for 8 hours. So we want to get each officer their own camera, but you can't change the battery. So what happens if the officer's working a double shift? Yeah. What happens for that second shift? So there's another manufacturer that makes a nice camera that has 2 batteries. You can swap batteries. So there's all these different little things you have to look into that you're constantly thinking of new things that you have to consider.
So my only other question, Bill, is I scrolled through looking for it, but are there, in past years, we've talked about cross charges from NEMLAC or things like that from that, maybe we had to share a burden for an upgrade to the.
We pay one fee to be a member of NEMLAC.
Yep.
It's a yearly fee. I think I paid it out of dues and memberships this year.
Roger that.
I think it's $5,500. And that's it. It's a one-time cost. It doesn't matter how many times you use the services of any of the NEMLAC units. It's just a one-time cost.
Okay. I thought I was remembering a year, maybe they upgraded the trailer or something like that. And
so a couple of years ago, they purchased a new command post. Yeah. So they were looking for a one-time increase on the fee.
Okay, great.
Most of the equipment that NEMLAC uses is paid for by NERAC. It's just they were looking to make up the difference of what NERAC was offering for the command post through the 61 cities and towns that are involved in NEMLAC.
Okay.
Joanne, you had a question?
Yes, Chief, a couple line items, 5136 court. I just noted that for obvious reasons, our total expenditures through the end of December are obviously significantly down due to COVID. Just wondering what impact going forward. Is there a backlog of cases that
There's a-
will then drive up costs?
There's a massive backload of cases. However,
Yeah.
court can only handle so many cases at a time.
Okay,
So I don't see, court will start up again and we'll have officers there. But Malden District Court, which is actually in Medford now, only has 2 judges if they're both there. So I don't see all of a sudden us getting flooded with court costs.
so it's reasonable to level fund that for the next fiscal year.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And
year-
just,
No, no.
I'm
I was
sorry, go
gonna
ahead.
say, This year, we're having a hard time with the one overtime budget. that,
Yeah,
it's
that was
really
my
hit
next
me.
question. Yeah.
The one that's hit me hard this year is the emergency line item,
Yeah,
5139.
yeah,
With COVID, we've had to quarantine some people. We've had some major incidents in over this fiscal year so far that have consumed some serious money. We had the shooting on Audubon Road. We had the swap call out last week. Obviously, the 3 weeks ago, obviously the incident on Otis Street consumed significant money. That's just to name a few. So that line item's been getting chewed up pretty fast.
Yeah.
Last year we did pretty good with overtime. We turned a lot of money back because with COVID, I was able to take the school resource officers, put them back on patrol. And because of minimum manning on each shift, having the extra officers patrolling, there wasn't as much overtime. But believe it or not, most people didn't take any time off when COVID started. There was no reason to take time off because you couldn't do anything.
couldn't go anywhere.
Couldn't go anywhere, so they all came to work.
And in terms of training going forward and
Training,
head count,
training, is very important. I guess I couldn't stress enough. The day of the Otis Street incident, Steve Mail came down, he was talking to me, and I said, Steve, I said, the reason none of our people got hurt down here is because of the training we do. So training is just the most important thing for the health and safety of our officers. I don't know what kind
yeah,
of training-
I'm sorry, I was more referring to new officers coming on board or adding head count or backfilling missing officers. Yeah,
So right now, believe it or not, I'm knocking on wood for the first time in 10 years, we are fully staffed.
yay.
I'm not going to hold my breath because I don't know how long it will last, but we are fully staffed. We have our 3 most recent officers graduated the academy. I think it was December 14th, and they're still in their field training. But I know last year I made a sales pitch about sometime in the future asking for more officers. So obviously,
Sometime in the
Future.
future, Chief. That was the operative. Yeah.
Right, and I obviously this is not the year to ask for that, but I just wanted with you folks, I want to set the stage for that. I did some numbers today, just to give you an idea of how the town's growing, and I'm sure I don't have to tell you folks, you already know, but I made a list of projects in town that are either being built now or are on slate to be built. And that includes 68 Foundry Street, which is 83 units. The building at 330 North Ave is being converted from an office building into apartments. 178 Albion Street, which is Harvard Mills, is 190 units. There's a project at 581 Salem Street of 19 units. 610 Salem Street's 30 units. Quantipow Parkway is a proposed 485 units. Tarrant Lane's 180. 259 Water Street is 16. 404 Lowell Street's 8. There's a project for 44 to 48 Crescent Street, which is 56 units. There's another one that just came up, 62 to 76 Foundry Street of 58 units. North Ave is 38 units. 610 Salem Street, I already did that one. Then 525, 527 Salem Street's 21 units. So when you add that all up, it's over 1,000 new residential units in town. And so I looked at other similar style buildings in town. It kind of came up with a number of a half a call per unit per year on average. So it comes out to about 600 new calls per year for us, just from those new buildings. And we know that next year there'll be a whole new list of new buildings. We've been operating with the same number of people for as long as I can remember. We're busy, we're very busy, and that's why we need the mental health clinician, the recovery coach here to take the mental health side of the burden of this off of our shoulders. That's why we need parking enforcement here, because we just don't have time to do parking enforcement. So every year our caseload increases, yet we keep doing it with the same number of people. And with these numbers and the amount of people moving into town, when you start adding up medical aids, domestics, larcenies, all the other things you can come up with, there's a breaking point. And I don't know what that is, and I don't know when it is, but I want to get ahead of it.
So for whatever it's worth, I'll just chime in to say, you know, at our first tri-board meeting a couple of years ago, I know this specific issue came up from one of our members, saying that just to signal that we're doing those same kind of scaling to growth kind of analyses for public safety, education, all sorts of things. So I think you're making all the right points, but I think you get a group here and on the FinCom was kind of keeping an eye on it too. So when we hear about rosy projections about revenue, we also, we all do financial models for a living. We know to scale up the cost side. So it's something that, you know, I know a lot of our members that have their eye on, Bill. I'll just say that. So the specifics will be important, but the density, the amount, you know, when it all comes online, the traffic issues versus the regular, I don't call it regular, but other types of police needs, it's all front of mind, I think, for the FinCom for accurate costing.
And I appreciate that. And for us, there's a big difference between the types of projects that are built. I'll use the two buildings, 3 Bennett Streets, one of the new ones. That's condominiums. 175 North Ave, where Tono's is, condominiums. Very rarely do we go to those buildings. It's the apartment buildings where we do most of our work, and these are all apartment buildings. So I expect to be busy at each one of these addresses.
Amy, I can't see you, but I know you're there. Anybody have anything else?
I don't think I had any other questions.
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
Likewise.
Am I supposed to ask for a motion to adjourn? Are we that formal in this subcommittee? Is that part of the process, Joanne, Gerard?
I will move adjournment if no other members have questions or the chief has no other closing comments.
Now, I just want to thank you for your time tonight and hearing me.
Thank you,
Okay,
Chief.
Chief, we appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Take care.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
See ya.
Bye.